Hello there. Today we are going to discuss about longing for something more. This quest and question in all of our heart to constantly want more from life. It could be more material things or more spirituality or something else. But there is always that longing for more. It always is a quest without an end till we die. And even if we die, is that really an end? In today's time, more and more people are becoming atheist. Who wants God, right? Atheism is good as well, but in some ways it's not very different from believing in God. How is that? Well, in one scenario, you believe in something greater exists. In the other, you believe nothing greater exists. However, in both scenarios, they are nothing but beliefs, as none of them can be proven. Belief always is a personal choice. Right or wrong, good or bad, is nothing more but an opinion based on our personal perspective, isn't it? What we as human species should be yearning towards is to become experimentalist. Yes, I just coined that word. Traditional Eastern philosophy might also call them yogis. What I was going to say was science. But science is also another belief system until you experience something for yourself. So why experimentalist? Because like religion or science, both of it are nothing but a belief system until you experience it for yourself and prove it. For example, we read in books, our science books, that water becomes vapor and we just believe in it. Till that point, it's nothing but just a belief, same as religion. But what makes it science is the experiment that you can conduct in a lab to prove your truth on the experiment instead of a belief system. That's when it becomes your truth rather than just a belief. Same holds true for religion or anything that we hear. We shouldn't negate it straight away. That would be ignorance or our own mental boundaries. Anything that comes should be looked at with a complete open mind, proved for your own self, to accept it as your own truth. Until then, it's nothing but your belief. For thousands of years, through history, science, and maths, we believed that God created the universe, that Earth was flat. Post that, for thousands of years, people believed that people were very primitive until they found the pyramids of Egypt and the Mayan culture in South America. Even the timeline that we believed from early days, early 1900s to now, has changed. Now, more and more research has been found where it proves that these cultures in this ancient civilization were much more smarter and much more clever than when we predicted earlier. First, we believed the world revolved around us. Then, we believed it was only our solar system in the world, only one galaxy. And now we know that there are not hundreds but millions of galaxies, stars, and we are nothing but a speck of dust in wider perspective. Theories that were discovered are being rediscovered and questioned again with open mind to open up new pathways. After all, that's how we have reached this far. It's the theory of evolution. If Einstein wouldn't have thought of the fourth dimension, thinking of things through a different dimension, we wouldn't have got the E equals to mc square. After all, if we don't question those boundaries, how will the human species evolve? Funnily enough, all things I mentioned before is something that we all know. However, when it comes to certain things in life, all of a sudden there is a huge wall that gets created out of our own ego and our own preconceived notions that stops our questioning mind, takes away that curiosity. That is the single biggest damage that has stopped us from evolving all our life as an individual. Discoveries like Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Christ, Buddha, and many more people were able to go beyond and achieve that greatness was because they started questioning the very boundaries that they were living in. This reminds me of a story that my dad used to tell me about an impatient, anxious, and enthusiastic young baby elephant who was bought by a circus group. It used to run around, so they tied him with a chain to a small bark of the tree. As a baby, it tried to move, break the tree, break free, but wasn't strong enough. So in the end, it gave up and sat down. Years passed and cycle continued. He gave up trying and fighting after a few months. Soon as they would tie him to that bark, he would sit down quietly. After a few years, it wasn't a baby anymore. It was huge, so huge that he could take up the whole jungle. But by that time, it had created that mental boundary. By the time it was too hard, it was pretty much impossible for it to think that it can break free. Its freedom was in his own hands, but his mind never allowed it to be free. This holds true for all of our lives, in one stage of life or the other. So every now and then it's very important to look at things from a free and open mind. Now all of us in our head are very flexible or capable of being flexible and are very open-minded, but a good trick to see or check if this is true. Think of the last time you got frustrated on someone else. Think of that scenario. Ask yourself whether it's where it is coming from. Is that your ego speaking? Social pressure? Your own self-created pressure out of nothing? Why? And what is that made? What is that made you so rigid about that topic? Introspect. Once you find the root cause of it, you will automatically become comfortable with it. Experiment. Here's another great story by Swami Vivekananda about yearning for more or God. Why do all humans need to have it? A great sage used to say, suppose there is a thief in a room, and somehow he comes to know that there is a vast mass of gold right in the next room, and then there is only a thin partition between two rooms. What would be the condition of that thief? He would be sleepless. He would not be able to eat or do anything. His whole mind would be on getting that gold. Do you mean to say that if all these people really believe that the mine of happiness is the blessedness of glory were here, they would act as they do in the world without trying to get God? As soon as man begins to believe there is God, he becomes mad with longing to get to it. Others may go their way, but as soon as a man is sure that there is much higher life than that which he is leading here, As soon as you feel sure that the senses are not all, that this limited material body is as nothing compared to the immortal, eternal, undying bliss of the self, he becomes mad until he finds out his bliss for himself. As we grow up, we fill up our life with labels and identities given to us by the society. You stop seeing things for what it is, but what you want it to be, based on everything that you have gathered over time. There are plenty of examples that money doesn't give you happiness, greed is bad, honesty is the best policy, and many more moral stories that we have heard growing up. As life passes, these opinions become stronger and stronger, good or bad. Then you start rejecting everything else, and before we know, we are living in a misery created by our own boundaries. And worst of all, we are too proud or too unknown about our inner state to even admit it to ourselves that we are wrong. All these labels are luggage that gets acquired in the mind, feeds our ego self. And when we are trying to justify ourselves, we are doing what we are doing is nothing but asking our ego self whether it is right or wrong. This is like asking a thief who has done the robbery if he is the thief. Well, it will never say it was me. The mind will never say it was me. It will defend itself, blame others, make sure that it is relevant and powerful. So, such is the game of the ego, whose slaves we all are. Becoming aware of it constantly is the only solution. As based on the book of Gospel of Ramakrishnan, it said, even the enlightened ones can't let go of their ego self. It still remains. However, they react better to it because they are more aware in the present moment, so they can control it. So big question is, how should one be yearning for God or anything for that matter in life to achieve, whether it's success, anything you want? How much should you want it? And here is a really good story from Swami Vivekananda. A disciple went to his master and said to him, "Sir, I want religion." The master looked at the young man and did not speak, but only smiled. The young man came every day and insisted that he wanted religion, but the old man knew better than the young man. One day, it was very hot. He asked the young man to go to the river with him and take a plunge. The young man plunged in, and the old man followed him and held the young man down under the water by force. After the young man had struggled for only few minutes, he let him go and asked him what he wanted most while he was under the water. "A breath of air," the disciple answered. "Do you want God in that way? If you do, you will get him in a moment," said the master. The summary is, until you have that thirst, that desire, you cannot get religion or God or anything in life. However, you may struggle with your intellect or your books or your forms. Until that thirst is awakened within you, you are no better than any atheist. Only the atheist is sincere, and you are not. We believe in a God, the Father of the universe, infinite and omnipotent. But if our soul at last becomes perfect, it also must become infinite. But there is no room for two infinite, unconditional beings, and hence we believe in a personal God, and we ourselves are He. There are 3 stages which every religion has taken and goes through. First, we see God in the far beyond. Then we become nearer to Him and give Him omnipresence so that we live within Him. And at last, we recognize that we are He. We are the God within. We just not aware of it. We haven't become aware of the presence within us. The idea of an objective God is nothing but a stage. In fact, every idea of God, hence every religion, is true, as each is but in a different stage in the journey. Hence too, we should not only tolerate, but as citizens of the world, accept every religion or belief system, whether it is praying in a temple for Hindus, the mosque for the Muslims, worshipping before the fire for Zoroastrians, and kneeling before the cross of the Christians, knowing that all religion, the lowest to the highest, means so many attempts of the human soul to grasp and realize the infinite, each determined by conditions of its birth and associations, and each of them making a stage of progress. We gather all this flower and bind them with the twine of love, making a wonderful bouquet of worship. Because all of these religions is nothing but the journey towards the Seer. Most of the lines I said were written by Swami Vivekananda. So, finally, what happens when someone attains perfection? He lives a life of blissful infinite. He enjoys infinite and perfect bliss, having obtained the only thing in which humans ought to have pleasure, namely God enjoys the bliss with God Himself, a state where doesn't matter what your outside situation is, you are fully aware and in a constant state of blissfulness, where there is no more the pursuit of happiness, but it's the absolute blissfulness. As one Indian saint called Adi Shankara said, Sat Chit Ananda, the ultimate truth of existence, consciousness and bliss. Amen. Hope you enjoyed this talk. I would like to thank my family, Swami Vivekananda, Christ, Prophet Muhammad, Buddha, and Sadguru for sharing this knowledge. I would like to thank creators of this platform for creating such a great place for non-creators like me to get inspired. Most importantly, I would like to thank all the readers or listeners of this talk. Once again, what I share is often examples, quotes from enlightened beings with mix of personal opinions. I do not wish to create more disturbance by preaching or teaching things that I am not capable of. So the purpose of this medium is only to raise the questions within us, for you to go out, explore, finding your own truth, and take your journey to the Seer. Good night and good luck.